October came to its end, the morning fog was getting denser, and I had to get ready for work when twilight still reigned outside. While I was forcing myself to get up and get dressed, Kagome was still peacefully asleep. Yes, my shifts at the mine finished earlier than hers did, but if I could, I would have gladly swapped places with her to sleep a bit longer. How long were we supposed to live like this? It had already been a month, and then there'd be a year, then the next one, and the next one. What came first for me? This kind of life itself, or the fact that I had to lead it longer with Kagome? How long could we possibly just keep sharing a room? Today, the monotony of the daily grind was broken by an uncommon event. An accident happened in the mine. One of the miners had his leg run over by a trolley, so we were sent home earlier. Inevitable risk of the profession. If he ended up disabled and couldn't work, what would happen to his family? What happened to me if I were in his place? Would Kagome take care of me? On the way home, I bought some groceries and entered the hotel with my head full of heavy contemplation. Kagome stood in the hall, looking thoughtfully at the phone. Hi? Nico-san. She flinched and looked at me like she had done something wrong and expected punishment for it. Why are you here so early today? They let us go early. Just like that, for no reason? For some reason, I didn't want to tell her about what had happened. There was also no point in hiding the truth. Mato-san forgot to put a trolley on handbrake and got his leg run over. Was it bad? She asked carefully. Oh no, he definitely got a fracture, maybe more than one. You have a dangerous job, Nico-san. Yeah, well, still, what was she doing here? And you were going to call somebody? Me? No, and who would I call? Aren't you worried about your grandfather? Of course I am, but we'd agreed we'd only call Tokyo together. Had we? I couldn't recall anything like that. Alright, fine. I decided not to argue with her. Here, I bought some food. Kagome took the groceries from me and went to the kitchen to cook dinner. The evening crawled in quietly. If you looked at it from the outside, you could probably get the impression that she was perfectly fine with our situation. After Kyosuke had let us know that her grandfather was okay, Kagome no longer talked about him, the corporation, or our plans for the future. She also didn't mention anything about her father, as if the problem of his kidnapping had disappeared after an unsuccessful blackmail attempt. Every person deals with difficulties in their own way, but wasn't her attitude akin to fatalism, or even apathy? I definitely wasn't planning to work with a pickaxe until my hair turned gray, quietly waiting for an unfixed trolley to run over my leg. In Tokyo, Kagome had said she wasn't going to work her whole life at that restaurant. Had she given up and accepted her fate so easily? Not to mention Todai. I'm back. Kagome skillfully carried 2 plates and a bag. Maybe I wanted something more than noodles with vegetables, but it was all we had. Mato-san. She began with a look on her face like she had been dragged into the funeral of a third cousin of her grandmother who she'd never seen in her life. Mato-san would have been touched by her empathy. Is he going to be okay? I'm not a doctor, but it looked pretty bad. There was seemingly no point in going easy with Kagome. She didn't look particularly shocked. Nico-san, please be careful, she said without much of an expression, but her words surprised me. As if I have a choice. At least you've put on some muscle, she said. She suddenly smiled. It's just a physiological process, nothing to do with me. If you say so. Look, I've been thinking. Finally found the courage to start. We've been in this village for a while. It's time to decide what we're going to do next. What do you mean? We can't live our whole lives like this. Yes, I suppose. She responded briefly, as if she wasn't interested in the conversation at all. I'm not forcing anything, but don't forget who's at fault for us being here. Wow, dude. You had to say it like that, huh? I didn't want us to start pointing fingers at each other again, but Kagome's lack of emotional response was getting on my nerves. Who then? Alright, that's not what I meant. It's just time is passing by and we... Kagome interrupted me. Do you want to go back to Tokyo? It doesn't matter what I want. Whether I want it or not, it's impossible. But do you want to? And you don't? Me? She said in such a bland tone that I couldn't hold myself back anymore. You make it sound like we're stuck here because I want us to be. You're used to working at a restaurant, but what if I'd never lifted anything heavier than a beer bottle before? You think I want to become the next cripple after Mato-san? Are you going to take care of me? And even if you are, will you have the time, energy, and money? She wasn't reacting to all my attacks, but I suddenly felt ashamed. Sorry, I didn't mean to. It's just that we're in the same boat, but sometimes it feels like I'm the only one rowing. Not even sometimes, often. Maybe I'm rowing in the opposite direction. Kagome smirked, stood up, and began collecting the dishes. Thanks for the food, Iwamura-san. The sarcasm in my voice was almost enough to make the plates ring. While Kagome was washing the dishes in the shared kitchen, I didn't know what to busy myself with. It was still early, the sun had just gone down. Usually at this time we would only just go up to the surface to wash ourselves and change our clothes after a long day of work. That would take another good hour, but it is an easy task to clean off all the dirt from underground. Going back to the village on the company's bus was another half hour. When I would come back, rush hour at Kagome's place would only just be starting. Luckily enough, unlike in Tokyo, no establishment here stayed open late into the night. People were used to getting up and going to bed early. Kagome would come back home when I was starting to fall asleep, quickly make dinner for us, and then we would go to sleep. We didn't have too much time to talk on weekdays, and she'd often end up working on weekends too, as those hours paid the most. We lived in this village for a month already, but how much time had we really spent together? It was probably only logical to call such a relationship forced cohabitation. Kagome was sitting at the window and looking out the street. The few villagers still out to sleep were hurrying home. I was idly flipping through the pages of some manga I had bought at the local store. There's no hope to find anything better in this backwater. Sometimes I'd look away from the pages and shift my gaze towards Kagome. Was she bored? For now I was managing to persuade myself that it was better to live like this than not live at all. But sometimes I felt like I was about to go crazy from the depression and monotony. Kagome, on the other hand, could spend hours just watching the people that idly walked past the hotel. Maybe it was because she'd already had to go through a complete change in her life once, so she adapted to her new circumstances easier than me. Are we just going to sit in silence? What's there to talk about, Nico-san? She parried phlegmatically, without even turning her head. After today's accident with Mato-san, I'm starting to wonder who's next. That sort of accident is common in mines. I'm not exactly a brilliant miner. Maybe we should find something else. She finally looked at me and smiled. Like what? We could use someone who can wash dishes. Sometimes there are so many guests that we just can't handle them all. Even if I agreed to the job, how much would it pay? Less than the mine? Not exactly my point. Would it be enough to make ends meet? We'd once calculated that if we were paid as much as Kagome, it'd be enough for rent, but we need to start saving on food. So neither of us would be able to survive on their own. In a way, Kagome had an easier relationship with money than I did. She was used to cutting costs and didn't see it as much of a problem. In contrast, the thought of eating only plain rice terrified me. Are you unhappy with your life? Are you happy with it? I smirked powerlessly. If we can't change anything, what's the point of complaining? Can't change anything, I grumbled. We shouldn't have let things come to this in the first place. Nico-san, is there something upsetting you again? I didn't want to start looking for someone to blame yet again. After all, we were going to live together for quite a while longer. What was the point in souring our relationship? Live together for quite a while. These words are painting our future a bit too intimately. Everything's great. I snapped and got back to my manga. But following the stupid and naive plot bored me pretty quickly. Maybe it was time to ditch shonen for seinen. Maybe we should go somewhere, for example? Well, I don't know. Literally the only noteworthy place of high culture in this village was the place Kagome worked at. Besides, it's late. Yeah, it is. You know, I thought that despite Mato-san's misfortune, we'd finally get a chance to be together. What are you implying? Nothing. I immediately felt the blood rushing to my cheeks and lowered my head. So are you asking me out, Nico-san? I could hear playful notes in her voice. How long ago had I fallen in love with this girl? For me it was on sight. Got a little shaken up with the whole kidnapping thing, but you know, it's slowly coming back to me. How long ago had I realized that Kagome had become something more to me than just a partner in crime? The thought burnt my body like a shot of boiling water and removed my ability to think clearly. Was there a reason for my feelings? A starting point? Right now, it didn't matter. Even if so, I said quietly, I understand you didn't plan to get stuck in this godforsaken village together with me. I understand that you prefer it was that red-haired friend of yours next to you, that American girl, or Kobayashi. But it is what it is. She seemed to be apologizing, but in a voice that made it sound more like she was scolding me. Why would you think that? Isn't it true? I've never said that. If people said everything they think, maybe we'd all have a better life then. So there's something you're not telling me, Nico-san? What? I grew embarrassed again. I just really wanted to cool down. I'll step out. I need to go to the toilet. I walked out of the room unnaturally slowly and immediately ran down the stairs to the ground floor. The owner of the hotel, an old lady, was sleeping behind the reception desk. I had taken a liking to her at first sight, and as it turned out, later, not without reason. Not only was she kind and polite, but she didn't ask any unnecessary questions. Although she was adamant about providing a discount for renting the room long term. The fact that I had somehow managed to fall in love with Kagome seemed weird and wild, like I'd lost my mind without even noticing. How do you even tell if you've lost your mind? Although there were plenty of hints, of course. Take, for example, my irrational desire to protect her even against my own interest. But then what was I to do? How could I look her in the eyes after having realized my feelings? Suddenly the desire to go back to Tokyo and have my old life appeared so pointless. If we were together, the location didn't matter to me, whether it was the capital of Japan or a backwater village. But was I the only one who felt an instant change in my outlook on life? For Kagome, nothing had changed. Did she love me? What did she even think about Nikolai Anakin behind her solemn and detached mask? I didn't want to go back to the room, but it seemed like a good idea to keep standing in the hall for no reason either. Suddenly I started to believe that Kagome would suspect I was doing something wrong if I stayed here long. She was still sitting at the window, looking out at the street. Are you back? Kagome asked me without looking. Yeah. I responded briefly, sat behind the table and grabbed that boring manga. We kept sitting like that, in almost complete silence, only rarely exchanging a few words until late into the night. Good night. This time I dragged my futon further away than usual from hers, to the other end of the room. Good night, Nika-san. Seemed that just a day before everything had been fine, in perfect order, and I had been worried about us sleeping in the same room. But now my back was going numb every 2 minutes, and I had to toss and turn a lot. I desperately wanted to fall asleep, wake up tomorrow with a fresh head, and try to figure out what I was supposed to do next. But sleep refused to come. Kagome lay quietly. I tried to listen carefully, but couldn't even hear her breath. New love should bring with it happiness, but so far the only thing I felt was a growing acidic anxiety. What would tomorrow bring? I guess we're gonna find out. God damn. It just keeps going. All these fucking twists and turns, it just keeps going. Strangely enough. Oh, what's this music? This music sounds kind of ominous. Strangely enough, I quickly got used to waking up with an alarm, even though there had been a time when I thought it was the worst punishment for a free man at the end of the 20th century. The awful sound of the devil's machine abruptly brought me back to the reality, while Kagome didn't seem to notice at all, carrying on sleeping while I got ready for work. Of course, I couldn't expect her to wake up this early just to see me out. Sometimes it felt like I'd already done and continued to do too much for Kagome, yet got almost nothing in return. Now I knew why. It was love. Classical case, straight out of the books. I was walking to my workplace, drowning in the morning fog. The only thought keeping me warm was that today was payday. I guess finances had never bothered me as much now, when we needed that money to survive. But just yesterday evening, I'd found something more important to me than that. Even if by some miracle everything else would get resolved, I'd still have to live on with that newfound feeling. And strangely enough, brought anxiety rather than happiness. He's gonna be so distracted by this, he ends up fucking hurting himself in the mind, doesn't he? I wasn't at all sure that Kagome would reciprocate. Of course, she'd warmed up to me in the time we'd spent together, but hand on my heart, we could be barely called friends, let alone a couple. If I was a misfortune, maybe, but no more than that. And this is how I was starting a new chapter of my life, one that I wanted to share with Kagome. The CAT scan revealed that Mata-san's fracture wasn't as serious as it looked, which meant he'd recover after a while. We all felt quite relieved about that. Minors stick together, and something that happens to one of your co-workers might as well have happened to you. Nobody's immune to accidents. At any moment, the ground might collapse, the trolley might go off the rails, or gas might explode. This wasn't the job I dreamed of a month ago. In fact, I only had a very vague idea of what I was going to do in the future. Hard manual labor definitely wasn't on the list. Any healthy person usually overestimates their abilities. Likewise, I thought that even lacking knowledge and persistence, I could, so to speak, keep things rolling using my wit and intuition. However, in Japan, keeping things rolling isn't embedded in the culture. Even Yakuza follow a strict set of internal rules and hierarchy. Celebrities, stars, didn't light up in the sky of the local music industry just thanks to their talent and luck. Usually there was the hard work of dozens of agents and producers behind their success. Japan was a logical and predictable of a production line country as there could be. Maybe that's why we found ourselves in this position, by trying to block that production line. Our boss gave us a little bonus today, so the guys immediately left to celebrate it, inviting me along. I turned the invitation down, leaving none of them happy. Whatever. I want to spend the extra money to buy a gift for Kagome. I was walking up and down the main, and in fact only, street in the village, all the way from the grocery store to the hardware store, passing by the clothes store. What could I buy for her? I had absolutely no idea what Kagome liked or what she was into. In her free time, she preferred to cook, look out the window, or silently think about something. Typical female gifts, flowers, fragrances, jewelry, didn't quite match her image in my mind. Could have bought Himitsu a cheap necklace out of the window of the shop owned by the kind old lady, Kono-san. Himitsu. The memory of her brought sadness. Himitsu and Kagome were so different. At the same time, she and Catherine probably had something in common. Next to the necklace stood a small snow globe. Maybe that was it? Kagome would probably have been happy to appear in the place whose miniature copy was trapped inside that glass ball. To appear in Paris. Kono-san noticed I was examining her wares and walked out to the front of her store. Turned out that in the next few days they were going to have an autumn festival dedicated to some local spirit that apparently used to guard the mountain outside the village. Many Japanese still took their traditions of honoring spirits very seriously, those spirits usually connected to particular places. And the festival itself was a good event to go to. As a child, I'd gone a couple of times with Himitsu. Himitsu again. I wasn't particularly sorry about leaving my old house, school, friends, or even Tokyo behind. Parting with Himitsu caused a dull pain in my heart every time I thought about it. Although in reality we had parted long before that. Maybe even the day when Catherine returned and I started my search for Akira Shinji. Everything that happened after that could be seen as just the spasming of a dying friendship that never became something more. Kono-san was definitely good at her trade, making a passive remark about how my girlfriend would need a yukata. But the prices of traditional Japanese clothing she sold were a complete mismatch with my miner's wage. Kono-san quickly estimated Kagome's size and offered me a few color variations. The yukatas look great, but burning an entire half of my paycheck just for a little fun one time. Only yesterday that argument might have been convincing, but now as in a new reality where love held my purse strings. Besides, I'd never known how to spend my money wisely, let alone save it. A snow globe in a bag, a yukata carefully wrapped in thick paper, the bright sun shining its rays on the village. It was the best day in a very, very long time. Suddenly I realized I was smiling, or rather grinning idiotically, but it didn't bother me at all. Let them look. I was in love and had nothing to be ashamed of. A few women, holding baskets with clothes, did actually cast surprised looks at me, but I couldn't care less. Noticing that, they laughed quietly, covering their mouths with their hands, and quickly entered a bathhouse. Every person has the right to be happy, don't they? Why did I have to be bothered with other people? The only variable that was preventing me from solving the equation was Kagome. So full of happiness that I forgot that the only happy love is one returned in kind. Guess that's how it had been with Katya too. A simulacrum of her in my mind had completely replaced the real Catherine. But now things were way more complicated, as I had no idea what the real Kagome was like. If I dug deeper, was I even in love with the right person? As for Catherine, that damned simulacrum was close enough to the real person. So I needed that question answered. The sooner the better. Kagome lay on the floor reading a book. Murakami and some forest. I only managed to catch a glimpse of the title on the cover. Are you reading? She only tilted her head in response. Is it interesting? Got another simple nod. Where'd you get it? This place hasn't seen literature since it's been built, apart from the manga. I borrowed it from Kono-san. Kagome replied briefly. Kono-san, huh? I said like a prosecutor combing over a witness's statement. I have something for you. Here. Without any second thoughts, I took the new sogo out of the bag and handed it to her. Kagome didn't seem to understand what I wanted from her at first, opened her mouth slightly and looked at me in surprise. Then she grew embarrassed, took the snow globe and turned it upside down. Big flakes of snow fell onto the Eiffel Tower. You shouldn't have, really. Come on, they gave me a bonus at work. Tried to sound confident while hiding the package with the yukata behind my back. You'd better have saved the money. Who knows when we might need it? You always save for a rainy day. When are you supposed to enjoy the sunny ones? Don't be saying that when that day comes. Yeah, sure. Didn't want to argue with her. Kagome was right in a way. I was just trying desperately not to accept the new rules I had to play by, which placed us at the very bottom of the pyramid. On the other hand, I now understood Kagome much better, particularly how difficult it was for her to lose everything she'd had after her mother's death. Saving every yen, saying no even to the most essential items. Poverty holds you in a vice grip, slowly exhausting you, sucking all life from you. Then slowly, silently, every desire to strive for something more, move forward and evolve, disappears. You can only think about survival. Poverty doesn't put you in a mind to buy a yukata or enjoy a festival. Ah, right, I exclaimed awkwardly, backing away to the door. The landlady asked me for help. I'll be back in a moment. Kagome just shrugged. Kono-san was definitely good at her trade. And she wasn't too happy when I went back to return the yukata and asked for a refund. Tried to explain that I behaved impulsively and our budget couldn't withstand expenses like that. She parried sharply, business wasn't going well and she had taxes to pay. Her grandson was going to a university in Tokyo and her son-in-law was about to lose his job. Next I'd probably hear about lunar phases, Chinese calendar, and the predictions of a wise woman. I sighed, apologized again, and walked out of the shop. I still couldn't show the yukata to Kagome. Thankfully, the landlady agreed to keep it for some time. Disappointed, I returned to our room. That was quick. Kagome lay in the same pose, reading her Murakami book. Didn't take long. I grunted and fell to the floor. Did something happen? She finally closed the book and gave me a serious look. I'm just tired from work. How's Mata-san? Alright, turns out his fracture isn't that serious, so he'll walk again. I'm glad to hear that. She smiled and I immediately grew embarrassed. No, Kagome's smile wasn't something unusual, although she didn't smile often. But now that I'd realized how important this girl was to me, it was as if I had to get to know her anew. Every gesture, every look, every slight movement of her lips or her little sighs. You must be hungry. She stood up like a bird flying off a windowsill, noticing a human close by. Yes, it'd be nice to eat something. She walked out of the room, leaving me with my new feelings. Everything was delicious as usual. Having completely emptied the bowls, I carefully put away the chopsticks and looked at Kagome. What? Thank you. For what? She got a bit embarrassed. For the food. It was delicious. Ah, right. You're welcome. She froze for a moment like a lion about to pounce, and took out a cassette from under the table. Here, it's for you. We got a bonus too. New album from one of my favorite bands. Wow. I was genuinely excited. I saw the poster on a wall while I was living at your house. Besides, it was very cheap. Probably cheaper than that trinket of yours. I was a little offended she called the snow globe a trinket, but I was too happy about Kagome's gift to say anything. It wasn't even about the cassette itself. The only player I could use to listen to it didn't exactly have great sound quality. I didn't want to assume anything. The gift might have just been out of formality. Thank you. I'm really glad. Honest. Come on, what's so special about it? You're acting like it's a briefcase full of cash, not a cassette. She was blushing more and more. You know what people say, it's the thought that counts. You can stare at water all you want, but to learn how to swim you need to dive into it. What do you mean? Nico-san, if you hadn't helped me and my grandfather, we wouldn't have to stay here. Is she really going to start blaming me again? Maybe we wouldn't even be alive. Come on, don't say that. Well, she probably wasn't exaggerating. Things really could have gone poorly for them. I probably did have my reasons to blame her for what had happened, but now I couldn't even think about that. I was thankful that we'd ever met in the first place, even though I had to sacrifice almost everything I had for it. In any case, I'm glad that... Was I ready to confess to her? Not that I'm glad, I mean, despite some minor inconveniences. Minor inconveniences? Kagome laughed sincerely. Nico-san, you're either very patient or very silly. Or very much in love. I lowered my head and pretended I was carefully studying the empty bowl. Not everyone would do that for someone they barely know. What do you mean by that? I don't know, I just wondered, what would I have done if we switched places? So? Kagome smiled mysteriously. It's a simple question that requires a very complicated answer. I didn't know if I wanted to hear that answer. It's alright, I understand. You don't need to say anything at all. After all, I didn't help you for your thanks. And not for your own advantage. She suddenly leaned forward, getting very close to my face. Yes? And what sort of advantage could I get out of it? I felt my neck start to sweat. A disgusting feeling, huge droplets of sweat running down my neck, made me even more nervous. I think you know exactly what I mean. The snow globe is one thing, but a yukata? Yukata? You thought you could trick me. How would I trick you if I'd already bought it? There was no point asking how she knew about the yukata. What difference did it make? And why were you hiding it? I just heard about the festival from Kono-san. Decided it wouldn't be good to go without the proper clothing. You could have asked me if I want to go. Kagome frowned and pulled away. Right, I know we don't have much money, and I can't burn it like that. Nico-san. She stopped me confidently. You still haven't asked me whether I want to go. Do you? I said timidly. I hadn't even thought about it this morning, but since you're putting me on the spot, you can always refuse. Can we return the yukata and get the money back? Well, I drawled and looked around as if trying to find something in the tiny hotel room. Knowing Kono-san, I very much doubt it. Kagome smiled, still giving an intense look. Listen, I could go back in on my knees and beg for a refund. Don't. What? I said don't. I said bring the yukata here. I want to try it on. I hesitated, not knowing what to do next. You go get the fucking yukata. Was she mocking me, or did she really like the festival idea? I tried to believe the latter, but decided not to argue and went down for the yukata. Exactly.